My poor parents married me off to a rich man in a wheelchair. But on our wedding night, something happened that no one ever saw coming. Before we continue, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to hear my story. If you're comfortable, let me know where you're listening from, and what time it is where you are. Now let me tell you my story. The foreclosure notice was a stark white rectangle against the peeling yellow paint of our kitchen wall. It was, I thought, the final tombstone for a life that had been dying for 3 years. On the table, a mountain of my father's medical bills formed a messy paper avalanche, threatening to swallow the last of our tiny apartment. My mother Darlene sat at that table, her head in her hands. The sound of her quiet, defeated sobs had become the soundtrack to my life. She promised. Amara, my mother whispered, her voice rough. Mrs. Thorne, she said, she'll wipe the debt clean. Every penny. She'll get your daddy the new physical therapist. The one from the university. She'll save this family. I stood at the sink, my hands plunged into greasy water, my knuckles raw. I stared out the cracked window at the brick wall of the building next to us. At 25, I should have been in a studio, covered in charcoal dust, finishing my final year. I had won the scholarship. I had been the one who was supposed to get out. Instead, I was here, scrubbing pans at a diner and selling my sketches for grocery money. All you have to do is say yes. My mother said, as if it were a simple choice. As if she weren't asking me to set myself on fire to keep her warm. So I'm a payment, I said, my voice flat. I'm the price. Amara, don't you dare, she snapped, her head lifting. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but they flashed with the sharp, cruel righteousness of the desperate. This is a blessing. A rich man. A powerful family. Do you know what kind of life this is? You'll have everything. I wanted to paint, I whispered, the words feeling childish and stupid on my tongue. Painting? She scoffed. A harsh, ugly sound. Painting doesn't pay for spinal surgery. Amara, painting doesn't keep a roof over our heads. This is your family. This is your duty. He's a good man from a good family. He's just in a chair. That's all. A good rich man in a chair. A man I had never met. A man who had seen my photo, a grainy snapshot Darlene had sent to the Thorne matriarch, and deemed me suitable. A man, Elias Thorne, who was willing to buy my father's health in exchange for my life. The terms were unspoken but clear. I was to be a wife, a nursemaid, a breeder. I heard a pained groan from the next room. My father. He was a good man, a proud man, and the debt was killing him faster than the accident had. I turned off the water. The silence in the small, damp apartment was absolute. I was trapped. My father was trapped. My mother was trapped. And this rich, cold woman, Genevieve Thorne, was offering a key. The price of that key was me. Fine, I said. The word was small and dead, but it landed with the force of a gavel. The auction was over. Fine, call her. Tell Mrs. Thorne her debt is settled. My mother let out a sob, this one of relief. She lunged forward, grabbing my wet hands. Thank you, baby. Thank you, you're a good daughter. You're saving us. I pulled my hands away, wiping the dishwater on my jeans. No, Mama, I said, turning back to the window. I'm not. I'm just sold. 2 days later, a black car, long and silent as a shark, slid to the curb outside my building. I walked out with a single battered suitcase. My mother was crying, dabbing her eyes. My father from his wheelchair by the door just looked at his hands, his face a mask of shame. He'd pressed a crumpled $50 bill into my palm. For emergencies, Amara, he'd mumbled. I got in the car. The leather was cold. I didn't look back. The Thorne estate was not a home. It was a punishment. It rose out of the manicured green hills like a cluster of gray Gothic teeth. It was all sharp angles, cold stone, and dark, empty windows. It was a place where light came to die. As the car crunched up the long gravel drive, I felt a physical, oppressive weight settle on me. This was my cage. The massive front door opened, and a woman stood there. She was tall, rail-thin, and wore a gray dress that seemed cut from the same stone as the house. Her silver hair was pulled back in a severe bun. This was Genevieve Thorne, the matriarch. Her eyes, the color of a winter sky, performed a swift, brutal inventory, taking in my cheap coat, my nervous hands, and the single pathetic suitcase. Amara Bishop, she stated. It was not a question. Mrs. Thorne. Come in. She turned, and I followed. A servant in her wake, the foyer was a cavern of black and white marble. My footsteps echoed, loud and intrusive. The only other sound was the sharp, decisive click of her heels. "You have been quiet about this arrangement," Genevieve said, not looking at me. "I appreciate that. Discretion is the highest virtue in this family." We stopped at the base of a massive, curving staircase. She turned to face me, her expression unreadable. "I want to be clear about your role here. Amara, my son Elias is delicate. He has been through a terrible ordeal. His accident, it broke more than his body. It broke his spirit." Her voice softened, a practiced, brittle performance of maternal grief. "He is sensitive. He requires gentle, patient care. He is not a strong man. He is prone to episodes. His temperament is fragile." She was warning me. She was telling me he was weak, perhaps mentally unstable. I was being primed, not to be a wife, but to be a nurse. "You, on the other hand," she continued, her eyes hardening, "are durable. You come from durable stock. You will be his wife, yes. You will be his companion. But more than that, you will be his anchor. You will not upset him. You will not challenge him. You will be a calming, silent presence. In return for this, and for the duties that will come later, your family is secure. Do you understand?" "I understand," I whispered. My voice sounded small in the vast, cold hall. "Good." A thin reptilian smile touched her lips. "Then let us introduce you to your husband." Genevieve led me, not to a grand living room, but down a dark wood-paneled hall to a room that smelled of old paper, lemon oil, and a faint antiseptic tang. The library. He was there, in the center of the room, near a large rain-streaked window. My first thought was that he was a boy. He was 32, I knew, but he seemed younger, smaller. He was slumped in a state-of-the-art wheelchair that looked more like a futuristic throne. He was pale, but he was, I saw with a small sick lurch, beautiful. He had a sharp, fine-boned face, dark, unkempt curls, and long, elegant hands that rested, limp and useless, on the arms of the chair. He was staring out at the gray, misty garden, his profile to us. He seemed utterly, tragically broken. "Elias," Genevieve said, her voice soft, but with the same steel edge. He flinched, as if the sound had struck him. He turned his head, his movements slow, pained, his eyes dark and wide, found me. They were I was prepared for a monster. I was prepared for a bitter, angry, cruel man who would take his rage at the world out on me. I was prepared for a fight. I was not prepared for this. He looked at me with a kind of fearful curiosity, like a deer caught in the headlights. "Elias, this is Amara," Genevieve said, as if to a child. "Amara Bishop, your bride. She's come to live with us." Elias just stared at me. I could see his throat move as he swallowed. It's nice to meet you, Amara," he whispered. His voice was soft. It was weak. It was trembling. My heart, which I thought had turned to stone, did a painful, stupid lurch. This wasn't a monster, this was a victim. He was as much a prisoner of this house as I was. "Hello, Elias," I said, my voice coming out softer than I intended. "My mother. She can be a lot," he whispered, his eyes flicking to Genevieve, then quickly away. He was afraid of her. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad to finally have a friend." He gave me a small, shy, broken smile. I was done. All the fight, all the cold rage I had been nursing, just evaporated. It was replaced by a deep, profound, and suffocating pity. This was my jailer, and he was a sad, lonely boy, trapped in a chair, terrorized by his own mother. Genevieve put a hand on his shoulder. A gesture that was meant to look loving but seemed purely possessive. "See? I told you she was lovely. You two will be very happy." She turned to me. "He is, as you can see, very fragile. He requires patience, kindness. He has been through an unspeakable trauma." I just nodded, my throat tight. I looked at the man I was about to marry, this tragic groom. I wasn't in a prison, I realized. I was in a hospital. A quiet, lonely, Gothic hospital. And my life sentence was not to be a wife. It was to be a nursemaid. This wasn't a horror story. It was just a tragedy. The wedding was a crime scene. A cold, sterile, joyless affair that took place an hour later right there in the library. There were no flowers. There were no guests. There was only me, in my one good black dress. Elias in his wheelchair wearing a dark suit that seemed too large for his frail frame, and Genevieve a silent, stone-faced sentinel. 2 men in identical dark suits. The Thorne family lawyers. were there to act as witnesses. A severe-looking judge, clearly an old family friend, was brought in to make it legal. My parents were escorted in. My mother was wearing her Sunday best, and looked small and terrified. My father in his own wheelchair was staring at the floor, his jaw tight with a shame that was so palpable I could taste it. They were a living, breathing testament to the transaction. "Shall we begin?" the judge asked, his voice bored. I was positioned next to Elias. He smelled of soap and that faint antiseptic smell. He kept his head bowed. The judge read the words from a piece of paper, his voice droning, devoid of all meaning or emotion. It was the driest, most bloodless legal proceeding I had ever been a part of. "Do you, Amara Bishop, take this man Elias Thorne to be your lawfully wedded husband?" I looked at my mother. Her eyes were pleading with me. "Please, baby. Just say it. Save us." I looked at Genevieve. Her face was a mask of cold impatience. I looked at Elias. He turned his head and looked up at me. His dark eyes were wide, and I could have sworn I saw a tear shimmering in his lashes. He looked so vulnerable, so terrified, so broken. My pity for him in that moment was absolute. We were two animals caught in the same brutal trap. "I do," I whispered. My voice was a dead thing. The judge turned to Elias. "And do you, Elias Thorne?" Elias made a small choking sound. He struggled to speak. His voice came out as a reedy, trembling whisper. It was the most pathetic, heartbreaking sound I had ever heard. "Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you man and wife," the judge said, already closing his book. There was no kiss. There was no applause. One of the lawyers snapped his briefcase shut. My mother let out a small, shuddering sob of pure, unadulterated relief. The transaction was complete. The judge and the lawyers were gone in minutes. My parents were escorted out by a silent housekeeper. My mother blew me a tearful, guilty kiss. I was left alone with my new mother-in-law and my new husband. "Well," Genevieve said, a thin, satisfied smile on her face, "that's done. Elias, you look pale. You need your rest." My new life began immediately. The sun was setting, casting long, dark shadows across the marble foyer. The house was descending into its natural tomb-like state. "I will show you to the master suite," Genevieve said. I followed her up the massive, curving staircase, my small suitcase in hand. The carpet was so thick, my footsteps made no sound. I felt like I was floating. The master suite was at the end of a long, dark hall. It was vast, colder, if possible, than the rest of the house. The centerpiece was a massive, dark wood four-poster bed that looked like something out of a horror movie. The walls were a deep, suffocating blue. The heavy velvet curtains were drawn, and the only light came from a few dim, ornate lamps. And it was, I saw with a lurch, heavily modified. There was medical equipment, an IV stand next to the bed, a heart monitor, its screen dark, a tray of medical supplies. This was not a bedroom. This was a ward. A man was there, waiting. He was older, with a severe face and cold, intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He wore a suit, not a doctor's coat, but he held a small, black medical bag. "This is Dr. Hansen," Genevieve said. "He oversees Elias's care." A moment later, a nurse wheeled Elias in. He looked exhausted, his head slumped to one side, his face pale and clammy. "A long day for him," Genevieve said. "All performance again. Dr. Hansen, it's time for his evening medication." "Of course," the doctor said. His voice clipped. He prepared a syringe. What is that?" I asked, my voice small. Genevieve gave me a look of cold pity. "Pain medication, child. His nerves are shattered. The accident left him in constant chronic pain. He cannot rest without it. It's a necessity." Dr. Hansen efficiently, impersonally, administered the injection into an IV port in Elias's arm. I watched, horrified, as my new husband simply went out. His head lolled. His breathing, which had been shallow, became deep and rhythmic. He was asleep. Instantly. "He will sleep through the night," Dr. Hansen said, packing his bag. "He is delicate." "Thank you, doctor," Genevieve said. She turned to me. "Be patient with him, Amara. As I said, he's been through so much. He needs management." She and the doctor walked to the door. I stood there frozen in the middle of this vast, dark, terrifying room, alone with my new comatose husband. "The nurse will be in the adjoining room, should you require anything," Genevieve said. "But do not call unless it is an emergency." He needs undisturbed rest. They left. I stood in the silence of the master suite, my small, pathetic suitcase at my feet. The only sound in the cavernous room was the slow, steady, drugged breathing of the man on the bed. My husband. I backed away from the bed, a cold, sick dread coiling in my stomach. This was it. This was my life. I was a 25-year-old widow, married to a living corpse. I was a high-priced nursemaid, locked in a tomb with her patient. I walked to the heavy velvet curtains and pulled one back. The window looked out over a black, dead garden. The glass was cold. The rain lashed against it. I was so tired. I was so bone-weary. I felt it in my marrow. I had fought for so long, and this was my reward. This cold, silent, empty room. I turned back, my eyes scanning my new prison. I saw an armchair, a silk, high-backed thing, sitting in the shadows as far from the bed as possible. I would sleep there. I would spend my nights there. I walked to the door. I don't know why. To see if it was real. Maybe. I put my hand on the heavy, cold brass handle. I turned it. It didn't budge. I tried again, with more force. It was locked. A sharp, cold blade of pure, unadulterated panic shot through me. I was locked in. Click. Thunk. I had heard it. When Genevieve and the doctor left, I had heard the sound of a heavy, old-fashioned skeleton key turning in the lock. No, I whispered, rattling the handle. No, no, no. This wasn't care. This wasn't protection. This was a cage. I backed away from the door, my heart hammering in my chest. I looked at the man on the bed. His breathing was so deep. He was completely gone. I was alone. I was locked in. I ran to the other door, the one Genevieve had said led to the nurse's room. I tried the handle, locked. I was trapped. I backed away until my legs hit the armchair and I collapsed into it. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to stop the shaking. They're just protecting him, I tried to tell myself. He's delicate. They don't want me to. What? Hurt him? No. They didn't want me to leave. I was the property, I was the womb. I was the prize they had bought, and they were locking me in with the other thing they owned. I sat there in the dark, my terror a living thing. An hour passed. The only sound was the wind, the rain, and the slow, drugged breathing of the man on the bed. I must have dozed, my mind finally shutting down from the sheer crushing weight of it all. I woke to a sound. The breathing, it had stopped. I shot bolt upright in the chair, my heart stopping. The room was dead silent. Elias? I whispered. And then a new sound. A voice. It was not a weak voice. It was not soft. It was strong, clear, and dripping with a cold, mocking amusement that sliced through the darkness. You can stop acting now, the voice said. The terrified virgin routine is boring. My blood turned to ice. I couldn't move. I couldn't even scream. My throat closed. I spun, my eyes straining in the dim lamplight. Elias Thorne was sitting bolt upright in the bed. The man who had been comatose. The man who had been drugged into oblivion. He was sitting up, the silk sheets pulled around his waist, his arms crossed over his chest. The dull, shy, broken man was gone. His eyes were wide opened and they were fixed on me. They were not soft. They were not shy. They were sharp, intelligent, and glittering with a terrifying, sadistic light. What? I stammered. The word was a dry croak. The medicine, Dr. Hansen. Elias laughed. It was not the weak, trembling sound I'd heard in the library. It was a harsh, sharp, ugly sound. It was the sound of a predator. Silane, he scoffed. A little vitamin B12 for color. Dr. Hansen knows who signs his checks. My mother, bless her cold, stupid heart, thinks she's in charge of my care. She's not. I am. I pushed myself so far back into the armchair I felt the wood frame dig into my spine. You're not.
What? A vegetable? He sneered. A broken little bird? A tragic, romantic hero for you to pity and save?
He shook his head, the dark curls falling over his forehead. That is the performance. And you, my dear, bought a front row ticket. I was in a nightmare. The pity I had felt, the kinship, it was all a lie. It was a trap. The sad, lonely boy was the lure. The shy, trembling vows were the bait. And I, in my arrogant, naive pity, had walked right into the shark's mouth. You're a monster, I whispered, the realization hitting me with the force of a physical blow. I'm disappointed, he hissed, his voice dropping. My mother vetted you. She said you were perfect, poor, desperate, and simple. I was hoping for a bit more of a a spark, but all you've done is sit in that chair and tremble. It's boring. You're not paralyzed? I managed to say, "Oh no," he said, and his face darkened. He grabbed his own legs, his hands, which I'd seen as elegant and frail, digging into his thighs like talons. This part is 100% real. The accident was a spectacular failure. He patted his useless legs. I'm truly beautifully trapped from the waist down, a king on a throne of broken nerves. But he leaned forward, and his eyes glittered. Being trapped in this chair, being forced to sit, has made my other appetites so much sharper, so much more creative. He wheeled himself with two powerful menacing strokes from the side of the bed. The chair, which I had thought was a symbol of his weakness, was a weapon. It moved silently over the carpet, bringing him closer. "And you," he whispered, stopping just inches from my feet. "You, Amara, are my new permanent appetite." The wedding night had just begun. I was frozen in the armchair, my mind a blank, screaming void. The man in the wheelchair was watching me, his head tilted, a look of profound, almost academic disappointment on his face. "Really, nothing?" he said, his strong, clear voice filling the silence. "This is the part where you're supposed to be hysterical. My mother paid a lot of money for you. The least you could do is be entertaining." "You," I stammered, my voice a dry croak. "The medicine, Dr. Hansen." Elias laughed, a sharp, ugly sound that had no humor in it. "Salin, a little B12 for color. Dr. Hansen knows who signs his checks. My mother, bless her cold, stupid heart, thinks she's in charge of my care. She's not. I am." He wheeled himself closer, the chair moving with a silent, predatory grace over the thick carpet. He stopped just inches from my feet, forcing me to look down at him. The shy, broken boy was gone. This man's eyes were ancient, intelligent, and utterly devoid of pity. "You really bought it, didn't you?" he mused, tapping a finger against his temple. "The tragic, broken little heir? What did she call me? Fragile temperament," he sneered. "My mother, she's a monster of guilt, and I am the god she prays to." My mind was scrambling, trying to put the pieces together. She's afraid of you," I whispered. "No," he said, leaning in. "She's terrified of me, but not for the reasons you think. She's not my keeper, Amara. She's my servant. She's so eaten alive by the guilt of what really happened, so desperate to atone for her sins, that she gives me anything I want, anything at all." His gaze was heavy, possessive. "She thought you'd be what did she call you? A calming, silent presence," he mocked. "She thought she was bringing a pretty little bird into the cage to sing for me. No, my dear. She wasn't bringing you here to be a companion. She was bringing you here to be enrichment." The biological, cold-blooded term hung in the air. I wasn't a wife. I wasn't even a nurse. I was a toy, a new interesting object, brought in to alleviate the boredom of the apex predator. "My family," I said, "my only shield. The debt is paid," he finished. "You're bought and paid for, Amara. You are, officially Thorn property. There is nowhere to run. No one is coming for you. My mother has in her infinite cold-blooded wisdom locked you in here with me." He smiled. A slow, terrible smile that did not reach his eyes. "And I've been so bored." My terror was so profound it was almost paralyzing. I was trying to find an angle, a way out, a piece of leverage. The accident," I stammered. "Your mother, the accident," he mused, his face darkening. "The tragic car crash, the drunk driver who was never found. Yes, a beautiful story, all lies." He wheeled his chair back, turning to face the unlit fireplace, his profile a hard, cruel line in the dim light. "The public story is a lie. The real story is so much better." He looked over his shoulder at me. "Have you met my older brother Damien?" I just nodded, my throat tight. "Damien," Elias sneered, "is perfect. He's healthy. He's charismatic. He's the one who should have inherited. But my father was an old-fashioned bastard. He didn't like Damien. He thought he was weak. He loved me, his brilliant, ruthless younger son, and he left me the controlling interest in the entire Thorn Empire." He began to wheel himself around the room, a restless, caged energy in his powerful arms. "Damien, of course, couldn't have that. He's been running the company as acting CEO, but he's just a placeholder. He couldn't touch the real assets. Not while I was alive and well. So, I whispered, the horrifying truth dawning. The accident wasn't an accident, he finished. It was a failure. My failure, not his. I didn't understand. What? He laughed. That sharp, ugly sound again. Oh, you thought he tried to kill me? No, no, no. That's the story my mother tells herself. That's the lie that lets her sleep. The truth? I was trying to kill him. My blood turned to ice. He was in my way, Elias said, shrugging. A corporate restructuring. I sabotaged the brakes on his car. A clean, simple, effective plan. But in my eagerness, I made a mistake, a fatal one. I got the dates wrong. I thought he was driving to the mountain retreat that weekend. I was. I took my own car, the one I'd so carefully prepped for him, and I went off the coastal highway. He stopped in front of me, his face a mask of dark, ironic amusement. Ironic, isn't it? I woke up a king, and a cripple, paralyzed from the T4 vertebra down. He slapped his useless dead legs. The sound a dull thwack in the silent room. A beautiful, perfect poetic trap. I am, as you see, truly, beautifully paralyzed. I was married to a sociopath, a failed, crippled murderer. But it's been educational, he continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. When you can't move, you learn to make other people move for you. You learn to pull strings. You learn to observe. And I find, I like it. I like it very, very much. I stared at him, my mind scrambling for purchase. Your mother, I whispered. Does she know that I tried to kill her firstborn, perfect son? Elias laughed. Of course she knows. She's the one who covered it up. This was a new, fresh hell. This was a madness I couldn't comprehend. The police. The evidence. She lost it. She paid the investigators. She built the drunk driver narrative herself. She loves me, Amara. She loves her real boy, her broken, monstrous special boy. She always hated Damien. He's too normal, too much like my father. He wheeled himself to the window, his back to me. Genevieve and we have an arrangement. A do you might say. She protects me from the world. She keeps Damien at bay, brands him disloyal for even looking at me the wrong way. She manages my care. And in return, I need her. I'm her entire life's purpose now. Her tragic secret little king. It's a perfect symbiosis. And the staff? I asked, my voice shaking. Dr. Hansen? The nurse? Owned, he said, with a wave of his hand. Dr. Hansen is the one who faked the brain trauma reports after the crash. He's the one who provides the pain medication, the saline. The nurses, the guards you see outside, they're not medical staff. They're private security, paid for by me. They're here to facilitate my games. Games? I repeated, the word tasting like poison. His eyes lit up, and he turned the chair to face me. It is so boring, Amara, day in, day out, in this chair, in this room. So, we play games. The last nurse, a religious little thing, she tried to pray for me. It was obscene. I told my mother she was stealing my medication. She had her fired, of course, without a reference. His smile widened. The one before that, she was a bit rough, a bit handsy. So I hurt myself. He gestured to a small faint scar on his cheek. I told my mother that she did it, that she lost her temper. Genevieve didn't just fire her, she had her arrested. Assault. The poor woman is probably still in jail. He leaned forward, his voice a low, excited hiss. It's fun, don't you think, to be so weak, and yet, so powerful. To hold their entire lives in the palm of my hand. My blood ran cold. I wasn't his wife. I wasn't his partner. I was the next game. I had to get out. My panic was a living thing, clawing its way up my throat, stealing my breath. This wasn't a prison, it was a torture chamber. You're insane, I whispered, pushing myself out of the armchair, backing away toward the massive, locked door. You're sick. I'm rich, he corrected me, his voice sharp. The rules are different, and you are mine. My mother bought you for me, my new permanent toy, and you don't get to leave the playroom. He wheeled his chair with a terrifying silent speed, cutting off my path to the door. I was trapped between him and the wall. Where do you think you're going? He sneered. The show is just starting. Pure animal panic took over. I wasn't an artist, I wasn't a daughter, I was just a cornered animal. I lunged for the heavy velvet rope, the one that was supposed to summon the nurse. Help! I screamed, yanking the cord. Somebody, let me out. He's lying. He's crazy. Let me out. Elias's face transformed. In a split second the sadistic, intelligent monster vanished. His face crumpled. His eyes went wide with a practiced, abject terror. He looked once again, like the broken, pathetic boy from the library. No, please, he wailed, his voice reverting to that weak, trembling, heartbreaking whisper. Don't hurt me. What did I do? Please, don't be angry. What are you doing? I stammered, my hand still on the pull cord, my mind reeling from the sudden jarring switch. This, he snarled, his voice hissing in his real tone for just a second. He grabbed the heavy crystal water glass from his bedside table. Stay back, he shrieked in his victim voice. I'll call my mother. Don't hurt me. And then, with all the power in his upper body, he hurled the glass. It didn't hit me, it flew past my head, inches from my ear, and shattered against the wall. Then he screamed. At the top of his weak, fragile lungs. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated terror. Help me! Mother! Dr. Hansen! Help! She's attacking me. She's trying to hurt me. She threw the glass. I stood there frozen, my back against the wall, shards of crystal at my feet, as I heard the slam of a key in the lock, and the door burst open. Genevieve Thorne swept into the room, a whirlwind of gray silk and righteous fury. She was flanked by Dr. Hansen and two massive security guards who had been masquerading as manservants. She took in the scene in a single cold glance. Me standing wild-eyed against the wall, my chest heaving, the shattered glass glittering on the carpet, and her son Elias cowering in his wheelchair, his arms thrown over his head, sobbing in great, theatrical, racking gasps. Mother, she just went crazy, he wailed, pointing a trembling finger at me. She said she hated me, she called me a cripple, she said I was disgusting, and she threw the glass at my head. She tried to hurt me. I saw it. The narrative, clicking into place, the trap. It was perfect. No, I screamed, my voice high and thin with panic. That's a lie. He's lying. He's not weak. He's pretending. He's the one who threw it. Genevieve's icy eyes snapped to me. She walked forward, not in a rush but with a slow, deliberate, stalking menace. I warned you, she hissed, her voice a low, venomous vibration. And then she slapped me. The force of it snapped my head to the side, my cheek exploding in a starburst of pain. The sound echoed in the vast, silent room. You vicious little gold digger, Genevieve spat, her face a mask of pure aristocratic rage. I told you he was fragile. I told you he was sensitive. And this is what you do. You attack a helpless man in a wheelchair? He's not helpless, I cried, tears of rage and desperation stinging my eyes. He threw it. He's been lying to you. Silence, she roared. She turned to Elias, her face instantly melting into one of profound maternal concern. She rushed to his side, stroking his hair. Shh, my baby, it's okay, Mama's here. She won't hurt you again. She's crazy, Mother. Elias sobbed into her dress. She's unstable. I know, baby, I know. Genevieve's eyes, cold as death, met mine over his head. She nodded to the guards. Take her to the guest wing. Lock the door. She will stay there until she calms down. Until she learns gratitude. No, I shrieked, as the guards grabbed my arms. You don't understand. He's the one. He's lying to you. He's a monster. They dragged me from the room, my heels scraping on the marble. I was screaming the truth, but it was useless. As they pulled me through the doorway, I looked back. Elias was still crying into his mother's chest, but over her shoulder, he was watching me. And he was smiling. The trap was sprung. The cage was locked. I was officially the unstable, violent wife. I had zero credibility. I was his. The cage was complete. For 3 weeks I was a prisoner in the guest wing. A beautiful, sterile room with a locked door. A silent nurse brought me meals. Genevieve came once to inform me that my hysteria had deeply damaged Elias, and that I would remain in seclusion until I offered a full written apology. I had no choice. I wrote the apology, I begged for forgiveness. I played the part of the unstable girl broken by guilt. And they let me out. I was returned to the master suite. I was returned to him. My life became a living hell. By day, I was the perfect doting silent wife, pushing his chair, reading to him, my eyes dutifully downcast. By night, when the door was locked, I was his audience. He would mock me, he would test me, he'd accidentally wheel his chair over my foot, then blame me for being in his way. He'd throw food on the floor and make me clean it, hissing that I was nothing but the help. He was a sadist, and I was his new permanent game. But he made a mistake. He thought I was broken. He thought I was stupid. He forgot I'm an artist. An artist, above all else, observes. While he was tormenting me, I was studying him. I was studying the entire toxic ecosystem of that house. I stopped seeing my own fear and started seeing theirs. I saw Dr. Hansen. He wasn't a partner. He was a prisoner. His hands trembled every time Elias was in the room. I saw Elias, with a cruel smile, remind the doctor about his son's scholarship to that expensive private university. Elias wasn't paying Hansen. He was blackmailing him. And then I saw Damien, the perfect older brother. He wasn't the charismatic heir. He was a broken, bitter man, relegated to a small office in the West Wing. Genevieve hated him. She blamed him for the instability that led to Elias's tragedy. Elias had successfully poisoned his mother against his only rival. I realized the alliance between Elias and his mother wasn't built on love. It was built on his power. I started small. I approached Dr. Hansen in a hallway. "He's going to destroy you too," I whispered. The doctor turned pale and walked away. But the next day he forgot a medical file on a hall table. It contained a note. "Damien. He knows the truth. He can help." I went to Damien. I found him drinking in his office at 3 p.m. He thought I was a spy. I told him the truth. "Elias isn't broken. He's a monster, and he's blackmailing your mother." Damien's face, which had been slack with self-pity, hardened. "You think I don't know that? He did this. The accident, it was for me. He threw his glass, and my mother, she covered it up." "Why?" I whispered. "My father's real will," Damien spat. "The second will, the one he wrote after he caught Elias trying to forge documents. It disinherits Elias entirely if he is ever found criminally culpable for any act. It all comes to me." I finally understood. "Genevieve, she buried it. She buried it," Damien roared. "To protect her broken little boy. She chose her monster over her son. She's been hiding it for a year." I looked at this broken, angry man. "We were two prisoners." "I know where the safe is," I said. Elias had gotten arrogant. He trusted me. I was his broken toy. I was so reformed, so dutiful that he had started to brag. He'd shown me the safe hidden behind a massive, dark painting in his study. All my secrets, he'd sneered. My leverage over my dear, dear mother. He didn't know I was an artist. He didn't know I had a photographic memory. I had watched his hands. I knew the combination. The final act was set for the Thorn Foundation's annual charity gala, held at the estate. The house was full of the most powerful people in the state. I played the part of the doting, beautiful, silent wife. I stood by Elias's chair, my hand on his shoulder. Halfway through the event, Genevieve stood to give a speech. That was my signal. I slipped away. I went to the library. Damien was waiting. "He's in the safe," I whispered. "He's so arrogant he just left it there." While Genevieve was downstairs, accepting applause, Damien and I were in her study. He opened the safe, and there it was, the real will. But there was something else. Something I had been looking for. A small digital audio recorder. "What's that?" Damien asked. "Leverage," I said. We returned to the party. Genevieve was glowing. Elias was the tragic, inspiring center of attention. And then, I, the simple wife, stepped up to the podium. May I say a few words?" I asked, my voice trembling just as they expected. Elias smiled. He nodded, indulgently. I wanted to play something," I said. I held up the small recorder and plugged it into the microphone. "A recording of my husband. He has been practicing his speech. He's so brave." I pressed play. But it wasn't a speech. It was Elias's voice. From 2 nights before. His real voice. Cold, hard, and arrogant. Bragging to me. "She's such a fool. She really believes I'm her broken baby. I could burn this house to the ground and she would blame Damien for giving me the matches. She buried the will for me. She'd go to jail for me. I pressed stop. The room was dead silent. Every guest, the mayor, the chief of police, everyone was staring. Genevieve's face was white as ash. Elias, his face was a mask of pure unadulterated rage. "You bitch," he shrieked, his weak voice gone. And I said, my voice finally, my own, "There's the matter of this." Damien Thorne stepped forward, flanked by 2 real police officers and a man I didn't recognize. "This is Mr. Fields," Damien said. "My father's real lawyer." Mr. Fields held up the will. "This is the true and final testament of Arthur Thorne. It disinherits Elias Thorne completely." "It's a lie," Genevieve shrieked. She's unstable. We also have a full, signed confession," a third man said, stepping forward. "Dr. Hansen, a confession, detailing a year of conspiracy, false imprisonment, and the criminal cover-up of an attempted murder, orchestrated by both of them." Elias let out an inhuman roar, lunging in his chair, but the police were already on him. Genevieve simply collapsed. I stood at the podium watching them. I looked at Damien. "My parents' debt," I said. "Wiped. And this," he said, handing me a cashier's check, "for your art." I looked at the check. It was enough to buy a gallery. I walked off the stage. I passed the ruined, weeping form of Genevieve. I passed Elias, his face purple with rage, being restrained by officers. He looked at me as I passed, his eyes full of murder. I just smiled. "You were right, Elias," I said, my voice cold. "I am your wife, which means, under state law, I'm entitled to half of 0. I walked out of that cold stone mansion into the fresh night air and I never ever looked back. The end. Thank you for watching.